Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in. It is race week again, and we have a double header. This week we are at the Red Bull Ring, and next week we are at Circuit de Barcelona. I am ridiculously excited because this weekend is the Red Bull Ring. So this is KTM's sort of home race. So I'm really hoping we get some really good news. I know Dorna have said no. Believe me, I know Dorna have said no, but I am still living in my little fantasy dream world and thinking that we are going to be getting a third KTM team and 2 more bikes on the grid. I honestly don't know why Dorna don't just say yes, at least for 1 year, for fairness sake. Come on, you know you want to, Dorna. You know you want more bikes on the grid. I know you say you don't, but you really do. And it would solve so many of KTM's problems right now. We would get Pedro Acosta into MotoGP without losing Pol Espargaro or Augusto Fernandez, because let's be realistic, Augusto Fernandez has absolutely slayed in his rookie year. It has been so awesome to watch. Ever since he got that P4, it's just been like, yes, I'm aboard the Augusto Fernandez hype train. I was already a really big fan. It is quite hard when we get a single rookie coming up to, be able to compare them against anything, and the poor guy's gonna be living with Rookie of the Year jokes for the rest of his life. Thinking about it, will he still get a trophy at Valencia? I imagine he would, right? Because that would be quite funny. I hope he puts it on his Instagram or something, being like, yes, Rookie of the Year, and just rolls with that meme, because it would be very entertaining. I feel like they will still give him a trophy for winning Rookie of the Year, even though he is our only rookie. But I digress. This week, I am really hoping that KTM keep challenging. They're keeping pushing Ducati all the way. I really want to see some strong results from Jack Miller and Brad Binder. And of course, Augusto Fernandez and Pol Espargaro, who, let's talk about Pol. He did crash once last weekend. Fortunately, it looked like a very minor crash. But even, I think that's almost, this is going to sound terrible, but we can almost put a positive spin on it, because he did have a small crash and he didn't lose his head, which would have been so easy to do after that horror crash at the start of the year. If it were me, I would have had a major freak out probably. I know when I got back on the bike, I had a really big accident when I was 23, 24, and I broke a bunch of shit, and the next time I got on a bike, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. So for him to break a lot more shit than I broke, and then just get back on that bike and absolutely rock it, it's just incredible. And then to come off again at no doubt high speed, and then just get back on the bike for the rest of the weekend. Not only that, he scored points on Sunday last week. Just major props to Pol Espargaro. Seriously, it's so good to see him back on the bike. I don't care what anyone else says. It's really great to have him in the paddock. We also get even more brotherly love, and that's wholesome. And yeah, I'm just really hoping that he has another strong weekend, especially because it's KTM's home weekend. And I am hoping that we get some really strong results from all of the KTM boys. There is one topic I want to touch on this week, and that is going to be tyre pressures. So I didn't really dabble in it or do a deep dive or anything like that last weekend, because I was just so like, oh my gosh, Silverstone was such a great race. I was just all pumped up still when I was recording my last podcast. And if I had video and you're watching a video version of this, you could see me still gesturing wildly about what a good race it was last weekend. Hopefully we get some absolute banging racing this weekend again. I won't hold my breath because Silverstone's such a fast circuit. I can't see us having such good racing, at least until we get to Phillip Island again, and then I do expect some really, really Phillip Island style racing, which for me, Phillip Island's the best circuit in the world, so that's what I expect at Phillip Island. But I digress. Let's talk about tyre pressures. So I am actually a little frustrated because while we were expecting to see the tyre pressure system, monitoring system, and the penalties start to be doled out at Silverstone, it was a flag-to-flag race. It qualified as a flag-to-flag, and that means that the tyre pressure monitoring system wasn't used. So that's irritating. It's our first weekend of it, and it wasn't used. Although, I do have to wonder if we can count Ducati's results for the thought that the tyre pressure monitoring... That is a tongue twister. The tyre pressure monitoring system was in use. I wonder if that is why Ducati wasn't high. That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry. I got lost in the tongue twister there. But I've been doing some digging. I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts. A really great podcast if you do want to have a really thorough dive into this is the Oxley Bum podcast. So Peter Baum is an engineer in the paddock, and that podcast is absolutely fabulous. If you go and listen to it, he goes into basically how it works. But I'm just going to give you a very brief summary. So I honestly thought that they were going to be using the tyre pressure system on all the bikes, on all the grid, and would get some cute little graphics showing that, you know, Jack Miller's cooking his tyres. But alas, that is not the case. They are going to be doing it on a random check style system. So that is massively, massively flawed in my opinion. And it's a little bit irritating because this is MotoGP. This is supposed to be the premier class of motorcycle racing. And they're flunking out on this monitoring system, in my opinion, anyway. Because why not test everyone all at once? That seems to be the absolute fairest way to do things. And obviously, if things get leaked beforehand, for example, if the FIM accidentally leave a little bit of paper lying around saying whose tyres they're going to check, you know, on the Friday or the Saturday. In fact, I think it's just the Saturday and Sunday that they get checked, but you know what I mean. So if someone stumbles across this little bit of paper, say they're from Ducati, and they're like, oh look, they're going to be checking Jorge Martin's and Fabio Di Giannantonio's tyres this week, we better make sure they're okay. And the rest of them would still be able to run whatever pressures they liked. Admittedly, I don't understand why I'm so irritated by this, because I'm not a big fan of the tyre pressure monitoring system. But maybe it's because I'm not a fan. I'm just like, if you're gonna implement it, implement it. Don't cheap out on it. Don't give us some half-assed attempt of a tyre pressure monitoring system. Give us the entire tyre pressure monitoring system. Come on. I want to see some penalties getting awarded, which is not normally something that I want to see. But I just want some fairness. Especially because I do believe it was someone from RNF Aprilia was saying that if the tyre pressure monitoring system had been implemented at the start of the year or earlier in the year like it was supposed to be, that Aprilia would have had a lot more podiums so far this year. So that is obviously a jab at a certain manufacturer, which I think says a lot, really. So I'm an Aprilia fan, I'm a KTM fan, I'm a Ducati fan, Yamaha fan, and even though it is very, very hard to be a Honda fan right now, I am still a Honda fan. Apologies for the pause. My dog's food dispenser decided to dispense because it's that time of day. But yes, I am a fan of all of the bikes, all the manufacturers, all of the riders. I just really like racing, which is why I love MotoGP so much. However, it does seem grossly unfair that when some manufacturers are following the rules and some aren't, that we aren't getting a new system that helps with fairness and equality on the grid. And I just find that incredibly frustrating, because these guys spend so much money on these bikes, these teams spend so much money, and that no doubt they have thrown thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly, I don't know, millions of dollars getting these tyres, getting the tyre pressure system going, getting it all to work with the bike, getting the signals to go back to the dashboard and things like that. And it's just, to be honest, it feels just like a bit of a cop-out. Having half a system implemented is just a bit lame. But let's see what the Red Bull Ring brings. Are we going to be seeing some warnings coming out? I still think that Jack Miller is going to be the first one to cook a warning, because he cooks those tyres like he does. But I don't know, maybe it will be Ducati that actually really do get hit by this. I hope not. I really hope that we don't see people using the pressures incorrectly. But realistically, I do think we're going to be seeing a lot of it. But I digress. That's enough of me rambling about tyre pressures for today, I think. But yes, sorry, I just remembered how I started this. It was talking about Pedro Acosta and hopefully a KTM announcement this week. So I'm still feeling really hopeful that we do see, if not that third team, they have come out and say, the KTM team this is, that they would run a fifth bike if they need to. So it seems to be, based on me knowing absolutely nothing about anything and my pure assumption of reading news articles and listening to interviews, that KTM were sort of waiting and seeing until Paul came back and to see what condition he rode in. So the fact that he did manage to perform so strongly at Silverstone would give KTM, I want to say, a bit of a dilemma. So they probably were thinking along the lines of, if Pole's going to come back, maybe he's not fit, maybe he's not fast anymore, maybe he has, you know, maybe the injury did so much damage that it was not going to be him on the bike in 2024. Now he has come back and had a reasonably decent weekend. That's, put them in a bit of a sticky spot, because they have renewed Augusto Fernandez's contract according to Speed Week, and Pole's on a 2-year contract, Jack Miller's on a 2-year contract, Brad Binder's on a 2-year contract, which means they do have 5 riders going into 4 seats, which is why I found it so curious that they said they'd run a 5th bike if they needed to. So I had to look through the rules, because, you know, I have no hobbies. Well, that's not true. MotoGP is my hobby, okay? And all my other hobbies, it's winter. I garden and things like that. I don't really garden in winter, so MotoGP can consume all my time, which it consumes a very large portion of it, I'll admit. But yeah, I was reading the rules and there was nothing against running another independent team, so that's interesting. And the fact that, while we do know that Dorna has sort of earmarked the 2 extra spots for a factory team, they want to bring in another factory. They've made that abundantly clear. They'd like BMW or Triumph or similar. I think the fact that there's no rules against it, it is not written into the regulation, is really, really going to work in KTM's favour. We saw Honda at the start of the year play with the rules. I say play with, they read them and then they implemented them correctly as they were written to get Marc Marquez off that penalty at the start of the year. So KTM could easily do the same to run another team. Sure, they wouldn't be able to rely on Dorna to fund the new independent team, but they've got Red Bull money now. So Red Bull has a lot of money. Having a third team in MotoGP is only going to be good publicity for them. They actually understand that side of the racing too. And so I'm hopeful. I'm really, really hopeful that if we don't get that third team, we will at least get a fifth bike, which I'll settle for, to be fair, because I do want to see what Pedro Acosta does. I'm hoping that he comes in full Marc Marquez style and wins in his rookie season, because it'd be quite a nice throwback. I think the only thing I'd like more than that is if he lost in Valencia to Marc Marquez and we actually got to see, a passing of the baton, as it were, because we definitely seem to have been deprived from handing over, the reins of world champions lately. So that's something I'd like to see. Pedro Acosta just narrowly missing out to Marc Marquez, because they've both got that natural talents where they almost look like they're dancing on the bike. So, yeah. But while we're on this topic, actually, I want to run down some manufacturers, some factory manufacturers, that is, who I suppose I could see joining MotoGP. Do I think any of them are actually going to join MotoGP? No, because there's no incentive for them at the moment. We're struggling with fans. We need to get more fans, or we even have a hope of having a new manufacturer in MotoGP. But alas, let's go into the list. Let's have a think about who could be coming. I suppose the obvious ones are the SBK lot. I guess it would be Kawasaki. That'd be quite cool to see. BMW I'd like to see in MotoGP. That would be quite entertaining. But I don't see that happening because BMW has been really smart and invested in having their car as a safety car in BMW. See, clearly, clever marketing. I've already said the name 3 times and they don't even have a bike on the grid in MotoGP. Yeah, so it could be Triumph, maybe? So with everything they've done in Moto2, it's sort of like what BMW have done in the we're not there, but we are there. I don't think Suzuki are going to come back, which is a great shame, because absolutely adored Suzuki. Some of the teams that could come in, I suppose we've got American Racing, Ajo. I don't actually know. I've never really listened to KTM, Ajo, or Ajo. I'll have to check which one that is. It's one of those things that I just tune out when they say KTM. I never listen to the rest of the sentence. I'm just like, the KTM boys. I'm not like, the KTM factory. KTM gas. It's just KTM in my brain, because that's just the way my brain works, I suppose. Yeah. Sorry. Again, off to the tangent away there. I'm going to make this a bit of a shorter episode because I am absolutely shattered. I've had a huge weekend, so there's only one thing left to do. It's my favourite part of the podcast. It's where I do predictions, because then I get to look back next week and see how absolutely incredibly wrong I am. I think so far this year I've managed to get one person right, and I think that was last week with Maverick Vinales in P3 in the sprint. So I'm hoping for better predictions this week. I'm sure that, there'll be one week. In fact, I'm confident there will be one week where I do manage to guess who is on the podium and I get it right. I'll let you know when that is, because I will be boasting about it everywhere, especially in the Discord, because, it'll be like a mini victory for me. It'll be like winning the lotto, except I don't get any money, which is a bit unfortunate because I'd like money. But, I'll just settle for the warm, fuzzy feelings of being right. But alas, I digress. I apologise. On to the predictions. For Moto3, my predictions are going to be MP3, Ayumu Sasaki. I think that he'll manage to claw some points in. I don't think it's going to be his favourite weekend. I'm not too sure why, because I'm fairly confident, if my memory serves me correctly, he won here last year. But I just can't see it coming together for him this weekend. I think last weekend may have shaken his confidence a little bit, so I think that this could be him playing it a bit safer, and that's why I put him in P3. In P2, I'm putting Daniel Holgado. I think being on the KTM is going to give him a bit of an extra boost this week, and so I've got him there. In P1, I'm going to go with David Munoz. I think that if all these rumours that are starting to circulate around that Moto2 seat, I think that could be a really positive thing for him, and I'm hoping that it gives him quite a bit of confidence coming into this weekend, and then he will be in P1 come the Sunday afternoon. So fingers crossed, those are my predictions. On to Moto2. My Moto2 predictions. So I think that in P3, we're going to get a repeat of last year. I think it's going to be Jake Dixon in P3. I think he's really going to need to be pushing himself this week for a little bit of redemption. So if you haven't seen the video from last week, like me, you don't really have any more negative feelings towards Jake Dixon. But I know a lot of people have seen the video because what happened was right after he crashed out in a scuffle with Darren Binder last week at, where were we? Gosh, I've already forgotten. Silverstone. You'd think I remembered that because I'm from England, but no. So right after he came off the bike in an incident with Darren Binder, a reporter shoved a microphone under him. Now, I think that's a terrible thing to do when a rider's still got all that adrenaline pumping through his veins, and apparently Jake Dixon said some rather blunt and aggressive sounding comments about Darren Binder, and there have been a lot of memes going around about him being sponsored by Kleenex. So yes, that pretty much sums it up, but I think that he'll come back strong this weekend. Like I said, I haven't seen the interview. I have no desire to go and seek it out because I try and avoid things that'll wind me up. But I think that I'm hoping that he redeems himself after coming off at his home Grand Prix and he gets a strong P3. In P2, I think we're going to have Ayagura. Last year he did win at the Red Bull Ring, so I think that's going to be really giving him a bit of a boost. I think it'd be good to see him finish in front of Jake Dixon. I think that this will be quite telling about showing his potential and his injury recovery and whether it is truly Ayagura getting back to his pre-injury form. So fingers crossed for him. And in P1, I'm going to put Tony Arbolino. Maybe this is just hopium for me again, because I do like keeping championships alive, and just having him right up there with Pedro Acosta is just something that I really want to see so much more of. And especially if all these rumours are true, and it does sound like Tony Arbolino's going to be staying in Moto2, I think that I want as many battles between Pedro Acosta and Tony Arbolino as I can get this year. Because I think if Pedro Acosta goes up to MotoGP not at the same time as Tony Arbolino, he's going to just have so much more of an advantage in MotoGP, just having an extra year under his belt, that if Tony Arbolino does move up, he's going to basically suffer quite significantly from Acosta having that much more experience. So those are my predictions. Jake Dixon P3, Ayagura P2, and Tony Arbolino in P1. In the MotoGP sprint race, I think in P3, we're going to have Brad Binder. In P2, I think we're going to have Jack Miller. And in P1, I think we're going to have Jorge Martin. I don't know why I'm feeling like this. Maybe it's because it's KTM's home race. I'm expecting some good juju for them. I'm just thinking they're going to really have a really strong performance on that Saturday. Maybe that's just what I really, really want. I want this championship to sort of stay alive a little bit by denying Pecco some points. If I really, really thought that, though, I probably would have gone for Bezzecchi thinking about it. However, I've already said the names out loud, so that's my predictions for the MotoGP sprint race. Moving on to the Sunday and the main race, I think in P3 we're going to have Pecco Bagnaia. I don't think he's going to be as strong as he was last year. I know that last year he only won by about half a second, which really is quite a big distance when you do think about it, but I think that this year he's going to be just trying to start to settle in, keep banking some points, and thinking about the championship overall. So that's why I put him in P3. I think in P2, we're going to have Jorge Martin, because I think if he does have a really good Saturday, I think he's going to be able to push that performance through to the Sunday and settle with a P2. And then in P1, I'm going for Brad Binder. Sorry, Marco Bezzecchi, I'm not counting this to be your weekend at all. I think Brad Binder is going to take a win at the home Grand Prix for KTM. I hope it happens, to be fair, because I'd really, really love him to have 2 strong weekends in a row. And yeah, those are my predictions. So on the Sunday, it was Pecco for P3, Jorge Martin for P2, and Brad Binder for P1. It's almost time for another wonderful race weekend. I do believe we have a back-to-back, which is exciting. This time next week, my podcast will be sounding a little bit different because I'm going to trial out my new headphones and microphone, so we'll see how they go. And yeah, you guys, as always, have a wonderful weekend.